it's time to begin the meeting. I would ask everyone to stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let the record show that all board members are present, along with Haiti Robinson, Superintendent, Tanya Baker, Clerk, and Scott Mullins, Attorney. We have an agenda in front of us. Is there any additions or suggestions to change?
No, sir. It is as presented.
I would like to make a suggestion and a request that a slight shuffling to the agenda to take care of personnel matters in closed session prior to final budget approval.
I'm sorry, for which year, Mr.?
For the next fiscal year.
That would be FY21.
That's correct.
Where was that now?
On approval of the FY21 budget, that we shuffle that, slightly arrange that so that we take that up after we go into closed session for personnel matters discussion.
So noted. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as adjusted?
And Dr. Lyle, just real briefly, we had a motion, I think, to approve the agenda as presented. Then we had a substitute motion by Mr. Hackney to rearrange the agenda. So his substitute motion under Robert's rules is entitled to a second or not and a vote up or down, and then we go back to the main motion. So procedurally, the motion is on the floor by Mr. Hackney, and so is there a second to that motion? If so, it needs to be voted on. If not, we go back to the main motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the addendum.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And
Okay,
now,
just to make sure, I take it, our clerk, we all understand exactly how we are rearranging the agenda, just so the public, if anybody wanted to stay for one particular thing, they would know that the schedule's altered a little bit. So let's make that clear what we're going to do, please.
would you repeat where you want your motion?
Immediately following our closed session.
Immediately following the closed session. Noted.
Okay.
Now, did we approve the agenda as changed?
Yes.
Okay. That takes us to public comment.
Dr. Lyle, before we have public comment, I'd just like to take a few moments. I know that we have some of our resource officers and Sheriff Fleming, Major Owens here, and may I please recognize them first so that they can be on their way, sir?
Yes, that'd be good.
Thank you. And Mr. Setzer, if you can come to the front just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that in the news and there's been a lot about our resource officers and the job that they do. And on behalf of the Dickson County School System, the Dickson County School Board, we would like to recognize these ladies and gentlemen who are an instrumental part of keeping our students and our staff safe. I want them to know that they each have our support, they each have our love, and that they they do a great job. Not only do they keep our schools safe, but many of these ladies and gentlemen have been with us through snow, sleet, ice, below freezing temperatures, rain, wind, on Wednesdays to help not only deliver food, but pack the buses, and then go to the individual schools to help in that. So it gives me great honor to introduce and to recognize our school resource officers along with Sheriff Fleming and Major Owens. And Mr. Setzer, would you like to say a few words, please?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we are truly blessed, in my opinion, to have these men and a few women that's not here in our buildings on a daily basis. Not only are they are first line of defense if something bad was to occur in our schools, but they also, these folks bridge the gap between our students and law enforcement on a daily basis that is so much needed in today's society. Each one of them here, and those that are not here, each day serve not only as a law enforcement officer, but as a mentor, as a counselor, and sometimes as an educator to all of our students and our staff as well. I am a firm believer that our students, in order to achieve their full potential, that our buildings have to be safe and our students and our staff have to feel safe. And it is without a doubt that, along with the support and guidance of Sheriff Fleming, Major Owens and his office, that these officers help us to do that. Again, I feel that we are totally blessed to have them in our building, and I cannot think of one bad word to say about them, well, with the exception of Chris. Everything is good that I have to say, well, with the exception of Rolly. But without them, I feel that we would be going way backwards, and they do such a wonderful job in our schools. And I would like to recognize each one of them as well. Sheriff Fleming, thank you for allowing us to have them. They do a wonderful job, and we hopefully look forward to working with them this year, depending on how school goes. But Ms. Robinson, that's it.
Mr. Setzer, thank you for your kind words. And we'd like to, if you can help me please, we would like to recognize, and we can't shake hands, perhaps we can bump elbows there. Dixon County Public Schools Outstanding Service Award presented to Stephanie Mullins, School Resource Officer, in recognition of dedication to public safety and commitment to our children and communities. Ms. Mullins could not be here today. Dixon County Public Schools Outstanding Service Award presented to Sheriff Fleming, Jeremy Fleming. Would you come to the front, please, sir?
Thank you, Sheriff.
Major Owens. And that's Major Scotty Owens.
If you want to hand it to them.
Jeremy Osborne. Chris Mullins. Zachary Davis. Rolly Bowman. And I always thought it was just Rolly. I never knew it was also Rolly Bowman, so. And Chad Elkins. Ladies and gentlemen, board members, would you please help me to recognize our resource officers? We are committed to having you in our schools. We thank you. One thing that, as Mr. Setzer was talking, you're also a friend to many of our children. And you're their mom, you're their dad, that they may not be able ladies and gentlemen, would you please help us to recognize her? Yeah, sure. Please. And
Real quick, I won't take much of your time, but I certainly appreciate each and every one of you. We are blessed to have some of the finest school resource officers in the state of Virginia. There's a couple couldn't make it here tonight, but we appreciate you allowing us to be a part of your schools, and we'll do whatever we can to work with you and be there for you. If you need anything, just let us know, okay? Thank you.
Thank you,
I
guys.
have Sheriff Fleming and Scott, Major Owens' phone number, cell phone number, so you know what that means, so.
Absolutely.
There you go. Would you please give these to some of our witnesses? Thank you so much for attending, and if you need to leave, we understand. If you'd like to stay, we'd like for you to stay with us. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lyle, and we can begin now with public comment.
Okay.
A period of time for public comment will be designated on the meeting agenda during which the public may comment on issues related to public education. The Dickinson County School Board believes that the citizens of Dickinson County should be heard, and this is an acceptable format for receiving public comment. After the public comment section of the meeting is closed, the public shall not be allowed to participate in general board member discussions regarding agenda items. Public participation with the board members regarding agenda items can be disruptive, and the practice is prohibited by Robert's Rules of Order. It is the desire of the school board to treat each member of the public fairly and equally. Allowing one individual to participate while excluding others is unfair. The board may hold such public hearings as necessary to allow the public to more fully express their concerns, or the board may place the public comment section of any meeting at the end of the meeting to allow additional public comments. While we do not wish to restrict the free expression of opinion, we feel that certain restrictions may be necessary so that the order and reasonable standards of decorum may be maintained. We ask that the following standards be adhered to. The speaker will be recognized by the chair. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes. Speakers will refrain from the use of vulgarity or profanity and will avoid negative or embarrassing comments toward specific children or students. Board members should not respond to issues presented by speakers unless clarification is necessary. Matters of concern raised under public comment will be referred to the proper official for investigation and the future board consideration if necessary.
The first on the list is Kathy Music.
Good evening, Chairman Lyle, members of the board, Mrs. Robinson. My name is Kathy Music. I'm the regional representative for Virginia Professional Educators, and I first want to say what a joy it is to be here today before you. I also want to thank the technical support that allowed me in my living room during this to be at your meetings, and you all have it was it was easy, and it was always clear, and I could hear. So I don't know who I'm thanking, but thank you. You've done a great job. Also, I just want to say thanks to Mrs. Robinson and her staff, and I guess Mr. Barton. This has been an unbelievable time. In my lifetime, I never thought I'd see a time where schools were closed, there were no SOL tests. I mean, it's just remarkable the hard work that you all have done and the teachers have done, and I want to thank them. And it's been a real difficult, and I can only imagine what your central office staff has been through with the changing budgets 2 and 3 times last year's budget, this year's budget 2 and 3 times, and hopefully, you know, there's still, the state could still give us maybe more money in September or August maybe, possibly. So we hope we get one more if it's an up in funding, but I just want to thank you all for your hard work, and it has not gone unnoticed. And board members, I want to thank you for continuing to work hard for the teachers, Dickinson County. You know, there was a time where I know that just a step increase is not what you wanted to do. It was going to be a glorious year before all this happened, but I commend you for making sure that they got that and keeping that pay scale intact. That's going to be real important, so thank you for that, and I hope you continue to work for your teachers because it's not an easy job, and like I said, it's ever-changing. If I can do anything to ever help, I'd be glad to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Music.
you.
And just for our public, if they would like to call in, the number is 835-1620. Again, it's 835-1620. Thank you.
The next on the list is Phyllis Mullins.
Good evening. I'm Phyllis Mullins, President of the Dickinson Education Association. And I want to give my heartfelt appreciation to this board for their professionalism in public comment and everything that they do. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you've done for us. And I appreciate that you try hard to help us keep what benefits we can. I will work as hard as ever, like I have been doing. And if I can help, please let me know. But you don't know how much your professionalism is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. That brings us down to the consent agenda. We have several minutes listed. Is there any comment on any of those? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We also have several lists of checks to be paid. Is there any comment about any of those? Anything out of line? Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then there's a motion for the school activity fund. Again, is there any comments or any discussion about those? Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That takes us down to information for the board.
Thank you, Dr. Lyle. Good evening, board members. Just for the information for the board, I try to, as much as possible, keep the board informed of possible meetings. Many of these have been canceled, but again, just to look through. If you're interested in any of the webinars, or if you're interested in attending or participating in any of these webinars, please contact Tanya Baker, and she will be glad to help you to register and to get you started on those. Thank you, sir.
And that brings us down to good news for the school. Presentation, Kenny Word.
Mr. Ward? Mr. Word is from RMM Architects. Welcome, sir. I think this is probably the first time you've been to Ridgeview, and it's a pleasure to have you with us, sir. We understand, sir. Thank you so much for being with us, sir.
So I need you to come down here.
Oh, okay.
Can I sit this way? So, my name's Kenny Word. I'm with RMM Architects. couple minutes of your time. Typically, this is something that we do at the Virginia Association of School Superintendents Conference on an annual basis. We love to recognize the educators who are nominated or who win Superintendent of the Year and Regional Superintendent of the Year. It is our way of giving back to the community, but also recognizing these great educators. So, this is a nice school too. Did we design this? Anyway, architectural. So, without further ado, the Region 7 Superintendent of the Year is none other than Haiti Robinson. She is a consummate professional. She's greatly respected by her peers around the state, and she has a keen focus on student performance. Haiti Robinson.
Yes.
You guys in the background.
Here we go. You want me to take it for you?
Wait, yeah, on my phone is what I'm here.
Mr. Ward, I didn't know why you were coming.
Well, it was, cause it's a surprise. You need to stand here with me. And before we take this, here is a smaller version.
So this also includes our scholarship that we can use for our students?
Scholarship award that you will a scholarship that you will award to a student of your choice.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
And there might be more coming your way in that regard.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You need to come down from Fairfax more often.
Yeah, please. Good?
One good. Thank you
This
so
is
much.
yours.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right. Thank you very much. We're honored to have you here. Thank you. Do
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know how to get back?
I'm gonna get lost in this. I love the scenery. Beautiful.
It is.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. See you soon.
Thank you.
As we move along, we would also like to recognize Board of Education Continuous Improvement Award to 3 of our schools. The Continuous, Continuous Improvement Award are a 10-point increase in the combined rate in reading and math and in the percent rate in science. A 10-point increase in the combined rate in reading and math for 2 or more student groups across 3 years. A decrease in the chronic absenteeism rate for 3 years, or for schools with graduating class, an increase in the graduation and completion index and a decrease in the dropout rate for 3 years. We would like to recognize these 3 schools and thank them and their staff and their students and their families for this award. Congratulations to Clintwood Elementary School, Ridgeview High School, and Sand Lake Elementary School for this recognition. Congratulations. We have a lot of good news, and that's the way we like to begin our meeting. I'm delighted to inform you that the Columbus Fifth Foundation has generously donated $10,000 to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library Program for the 2020-2021 school year. This program just started last August and is currently serving 327 children, 0-5 to years of age, by providing an age-appropriate book each month to this child, to each child. This very generous donation from the Columbus Phipps Foundation will help Imagination Library continue for the next year. Our gratitude, heartfelt gratitude to Columbus Phipps Foundation, Susan Moore, and Scott Mullins for their generous support of this endeavor. Thank you very much for your support. And now, we would like to recognize some very special people that are leaving us. It is not too late to rescind, and I have their letter ready if you'd like to rescind your retirement. But I'm going to go to the front just for a moment.
Superintendent, this is the hardest part, I think, of my job, is when I say goodbye to dear people. People that have dedicated, are committed. They're the kind of people that are there at 7 and leave at 6 or 7 o'clock that night. They worry
About our children. They contact me or they contact a director and say, you know, this is what's going on. How can I help? What do I need to do? We have several individuals that are leaving us this year. If you look, there's probably there's probably close to over 200 years of experience that are leaving us today. And so I'd just like to recognize these retirees. I'd like to ask them to come to the front. We will then recognize their families, because often being a teacher and a school staff member, it means sacrificing your family and doing things sometimes in your position. And so it is my pleasure, it's my honor. Each of these people have a very special place for me in my heart. I have worked with them, all of them, for the last 10 years, and I'm a better person because of their influence. And so I'd like to ask Edmund
Carter Edwards, 42 years of experience.
Mr. Edwards. When Mr. Edwards came, I wouldn't accept his retirement letter. Our second retiree could not be here with us. Joanne Neese, 49 years experience. Would you please help me to recognize her? Another retiree is Colleen Deal, 21 years with the Dickson County Public Schools, 42 years total. She could not be with us either. Kathy Stanley, mentor, friend, all around great person, 30 years. Ms. Stanley? Our next person is the one that is out at 3 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, snow, sleet, ice. Doug, we've got a problem. 36 years of service to the Dickson County Schools, and he joins these distinguished retirees. Mr. Rose, would you come to the front, please? We know that behind every great person, there is someone that supports and loves them. And I'd like to ask Mrs. Edwards, Mr. Stanley, and Mrs. Rose, would you please stand to be recognized also? Larry Stanley. His role is to get Kathy an application at McDonald's. So I think he's already gotten that, or is trying to get that. I'm not sure what. So would you all like to say anything? Please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your recognition and your commitment. Would you please help me to Dr. Lyle, that concludes our good news from our schools.
Okay. Moves down to new elementary school project and litigation update.
All right. And I'm going to ask Mr. Mullins to update the board on the new elementary school project and the litigation update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm pleased to report that today we had our very first meeting. It was in a limited capacity of the chair and vice chair of this board and 2 members of the Board of Supervisors, county administrator, division superintendent, and the attorneys. The meeting was very cordial, very productive. It was limited. It was not open to discussion of resolving the litigation. We were disappointed by that. We wanted to have a more broad discussion because I know on this board's agenda, the one thing that you want to do is to get this litigation behind us. We were not allowed to talk about the litigation. The focus of the discussion today was about interim financing. We made good progress. I thought the folks on the other side of the table were very receptive to ideas to work together. We hope that this limited meeting will open up a broader discussion because there are many things that need to be resolved. But the priority right now really is to come together as a county to work with the PPA proposers and let them know that while we may disagree about some things, we're working through those things. That disagreement is not with them, that we are going to build a school together. We're committed to doing that. It may take us a little while to work out all the details of the responsibilities, but as a county, the Board of Supervisors, the school board, we will work through this so that we can enter into an agreement with the proposers to move forward. So that is, I think, the desire of the folks on the Board of Supervisors. That is their immediate concern, and that is our immediate concern also. But having said that, I want you to know that we are also committed to resolving this litigation. We're committed to talking about it. We're committed still to each of you sitting across the table from your counterparts on the Board of Supervisors and working through all the issues. Because the interim financing is only one issue. You know, we've got years of work to do before we ultimately demolish Sand Lick, before we ultimately finish the wetlands remediation. What we as a school system want to do, we never want to engage in this type of litigious relationship with the Board of Supervisors. Again, we want everyone to have an understanding of what their role is, and we want everyone to, the term's been used a lot, to stay in their lane. We want to stay in our lane, they want to stay in their lane. We want to build a school. We want to educate children. We've all got roles to play. So by and large, I think the discussion was good. It's not as good as we would like it to be. It's not about all the issues we would like, but it's progress. And so we take that one step at a time. We agreed to continue talks. They were going to talk with their attorney about the breadth of those talks and what all we could talk about. So we may have to have a special call meeting with you as a board to go forward. And certainly the one thing I want you to know is that we've been asked to do this with the chair and vice chair, but there is no action that is going to be taken without you being fully briefed on it. And I also want you to know that as far as the things that were said that are properly in closed session, that is on our closed session agenda, and on those details I will go into them with you in closed session. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I want to say is there's something that has come from the discussions with the Board of Supervisors that is a bit of misinformation that I don't want to get out of hand. And I want, if you're asked about it, or if any of the public has concerns about it, I want them to understand what the school board's position is on this issue. We have approximately $8 million. Now this is painting with a very broad brush, but let's just, for purposes of discussion, say that there was $8 million in our construction account. That account is in a school board account, and it came to us by virtue of money paid by the Corps of Engineers, reimbursements for work we've done. The proposed deal to resolve this litigation is that we would give immediately from those construction accounts $6.9 million to the Board of Supervisors. We would not have any other claim on that. That would just roughly say $7 million. That leaves $1 million left. As you may recall, they said that they would agree that we could use $250,000 of that money to do preliminary work with the PPA proposer for design. We know for a fact it's going to take significantly more money than that, probably around $600,000, which will be due sometime in January. They also, but anyway, of the $1 million that was left in the account, $250,000 of it was earmarked for design work, and $250,000 more was earmarked for wetlands remediation. Now, the question is, what about that other $500,000? And it's in our bank account. It will be left there. Just based on the information I have, you have, or I told you so far, there's $500,000. Well, I want you to know, first of all, that $500,000 will not be there because it's going to take more than $250,000 to do the design work for the school. I think the last time that we met, I believe I asked Curtis Ellswick, who was then sitting in the back, what the cost would be, and I think he said $600,000. But anyway, it'll be significantly more than $250,000. So the notion that there's going to be $500,000 there is probably not accurate. But the question is, if it were accurate, why don't we use that money to pay, to help balance the budget, to help the teachers, to help keep aides? What's wrong with that? And there are two answers to that, or at least 2 points that come to mind. First is that until some pressure was brought to bear, that was never what we were told. And from a Board of Supervisors letterhead, and it's also in their resolutions, if anyone wants to review their resolution of April 28th, this is what they said. The Board of Supervisors has agreed to budget the remaining funds left after the QSCAD bond account is taken to the school board and after the deduction of the $6.9 million. The balance in the account will be approximately $1 million. Now, since they said that, we know that $250 comes out for wetlands, $250 comes out for design, so it's really $500 now. And this is the essence of what they've said we're to do. The remaining funds shall be used at the end of the project, if needed, for the new elementary school. If the money is not required for the new elementary school construction, the balance will be appropriated to the school board for other capital outlay projects. So what we have been told consistently since we began this discussion, we wanted that $1 million to be available to use as we saw fit. The Board of Supervisors did not like that, didn't agree to that, and they said, no, you have to first build the school before you can have access to it, because they were concerned we could not build the elementary school within the budget. And then if there's money left over, then you can use that funds, but only for other capital outlay projects. So the concept that we could use this money to subsidize our operating expense was not bought into earlier by the Board of Supervisors. And that is floating around now as information that somehow we have an additional $500,000 available that we could pay our operating expenses. So by their actions, that's not accurate. But more importantly, this is what you need to understand. When you get money from the Corps of Engineers, their mission is not to educate children. Their mission is to get people, and particularly in this case, children, out of harm's way from flood. So when we started this arrangement with the with the Corps of Engineers, I think I've talked often about the time when we had the debate about the lump sum contract. And basically that debate in a nutshell, and I won't go into it in depth, but it was about whether we got paid a lump sum or whether we got paid based on the invoices. We only got paid what we spent, or whether we got a lump sum if we reached construction milestones. We all wanted a lump sum because we felt like that would be better for Dickinson County. And that wasn't just the school system wanted a lump sum. We were all, at that point in time, the Board of Supervisors, IDA, we all were very passionate that this was a lump sum contract. I have always taken the position that the money, because we took the risk, if the work had gone over what the Corps was going to pay us, or if the interest charges, if we hadn't got quick appropriations from the federal government, we could have spent more than the Corps was going to give us. And so we took the risk, so we took the position we should get the reward. If we came in under budget, that money should be ours. Now, what the Corps, when we entered into these discussions, and we had to go to Washington, D.C., we got our senators involved. This was a big deal at the time. It was a big deal in dollars, and it was a big deal as far as really the future of this campus. But to resolve that, what they said and what their attorney said is you cannot make a profit off of dealing with the Corps of Engineers. If you get money that you are not putting into these facilities, you cannot use that. And I remember them mentioning school buses. I'm pretty sure that they talked about all the operating expenses. It was very clear. Their money could only be used for capital outlay associated with getting children out of harm's way. That really should come as no surprise to anyone that you can't use Corps money to subsidize education, to do your operating expense. So I guess I don't want the public or you to believe that somehow you've got the $500,000 slush fund that you can make this right, you know, somehow you can make this right for the harm that's going to come to your employees and and ultimately the children, because it's not available for that purpose. We told the team of the Corps of Engineers that we would not do that, that their money would be directed to the proper purpose of Section 202, getting kids out of harm's way from flood, and not anything more. And just to sort of emphasize, or to give you some point of reference about how that came home earlier, when we built this school, we were looking at a situation where we had to field almost in just a few months athletic teams. And we were desperate to buy jerseys, helmets, shoes, all the things that were needed, and it wasn't cheap. And we knew at that point, and all agreed with the Corps, we could not use the millions of dollars that we had in our account then, just like we do now. We couldn't use $40 or $50 or $60,000. We could not use that money for athletics. We couldn't use that for football helmets. You could only use it for the capital outlay projects. So to the extent it's out there that somehow that money is available to you and discretionary to you, that's simply not true. And it's not really fair, because it wouldn't be fair for me to say they're getting $6.9 million. That's coming out of our money. It's going into an investment account. It wouldn't be fair for me to say to the teachers, they've got $6.9 million they're going to have in July 1, go get some money out of that account. They have to pay off the QSCAP loans. Now, it may be 10 years before the last payment is due, but it's for that purpose. And similarly, the money that's in this 202, this $500,000, should it be that much, which it won't be, that's not available for us to do an operating budget. That has to be used for us to build the new elementary school or to complete capital projects. You can't use it for your operating budget. And if anyone wants written material to back that up, I will be happy to supply that along historical information and my opinion to that. But I don't think that's really a point in controversy once you break it down and see where the foundations of that discussion come from. Sorry to belabor that, but I think that that's something that is going to get a life of its own, and I wanted to, it came to life today, and I wanted to deal with it today. Are there any questions about any of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins.
Dr. Lyle, we are now ready for approval of FY20 budget and end of the year fiscal year summary. And I'd like to ask Mr. Larry Barton, if he would, to come to the front. We have a copy of the FY20 budget in your packet. And hello, sir. How are you? Welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if you've got your packet there, as Ms. Robinson said, there's a copy of the FY20 budget and year-end summary. I'd like to take a moment to go through that with you and answer any questions that you might have. So starting out on page 1, it says draft at the top. Got the date 6/24/20. Looking at our state funding, this is going to be like our year-end summary. So our state funding is $15,815,451. Our federal funding is $3,364,200. One thing I want to note there, a change, was the summer feeding program. We received $410,000 through the summer feeding program. It's been a big undertaking that our staff has done in feeding the children. The other funds is $354,500. Local county funds, $7 million. And additional revenues, which is the carryover funds from last year, $316,971. for total revenue of $26,851,121. Does anybody have any questions on the revenues? Okay. The next page has our expenditures by category. Of course, we start out with instruction. Our instructional expenditures are $16,645,015. Administration, attendance, and health, $2,296,715. Pupil transportation, $2,305,480. Operation and maintenance, $3,233,545. School food service, $1,624,492. And lastly is technology, $745,874. Expenditures total is $26,851,121. Is there any questions on that? The next sheet is a copy of our closeout letter. It's customary, it's something that we go through each year. At the end of the year, we account for all the funds that were received by the school division, all the funds that were spent by the school division, and then the request to carry forward any unexpended funding. This is dated as of today as well. It's to Miss Angela Rakes, Treasurer, Dickinson County. It's dated June 24th, 2020. And before we go through it, I just want to mention that there's still a couple items here that it's potential to change if additional revenue were to come in at a different amount, or we're still working on the post payroll, but we've kind of got the amounts that it should be. But if something were to change on this, then we will bring a revised copy back at the July meeting. But opening up, we're looking at the total operating revenue and appropriating balances of $26,499,182.79. Those added with the carryover funds from fiscal year 19 of $316,970.89. We had the revenue from the capital expenditure budget, $123,750. That was the remaining payment we had on the elementary roof that was made. Our expenditures for July through June were $24,840,902.21. In July 2020 payroll, which is done in June for our 9 to 11 month employees that's handed out in July, is $1,447,663.08. Then the school board is carrying over the following unexpended funding. We have our GED testing funds, $11,550. Our textbook carryover funds, $367,944.34. Dolly Parton Imagination Library funds, $13,319.25. And then our operational budget carryover, which the county was allowing us to carry this over to help with the budget shortfall in fiscal year 21. We had estimated $250,000 originally, and the number is $258,524.80. So total unexpended balances is $651,338.39, which gives a total expenditures and unexpended balances of $26,939,903.68, which matches our revenue and balances at the top. Is there any questions on this?
You said you had projected 250 on the carryover.
Yes, in our budget, in the fiscal year 21 budget, the number we used was $250,000. So sometimes on these carryovers, Mr. Hackney, we estimate them at the end, like with our textbook funds and stuff, and sometimes we have to go back through with an amendment later to adjust to the actual numbers that it come out to.
Okay, thank you.
If there are any revisions to the letter, we will, of course, it is due to the Treasurer's Office on June the 30th, and we will send you a revised copy of the letter for your approval in July.
We need a motion to approve this budget.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
And Mr. Barton, I think we have moved FY21 proposed budget to the end of closed session, but the next item is approval of the DCPS FY21 employee salary scales.
Thank you. Okay, again, in the board packet that was sent out to you that Ms. Baker sent out, it had copies of all of our salary scales. These salary scales are the ones that were revised last year that we worked through the committees to update our scales to get those moving. The Board of Supervisors played a big role in that. They participated in the committee, as did school board members, teachers, all lines of staff, everyone participated. These scales are not changed. They're identical to what we are under for fiscal year 20, the current year that we're in. The only thing is we will be given a step this year, which, you know, whatever year's service they were in this year, if they were on step 6, they would just move to step 7. But the scales are exactly the same. We're just asking for approval of these scales.
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask Mark Mullins to come and for the approval of the FY21 Title I applications. I believe you received those this week. And Mr. Mullins?
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, members of the board. The applications are not included in your packet, but I did email them to you earlier, so hopefully you were able to receive those. They're quite a large file, so, but we did try to get those to you, and we're asking for approval tonight of 5 federal grant applications. Those are Title I Part A, which is improving basic programs, Title II Part A, supporting effective instruction, Title III, language instruction for English learners, Title IV Part A, student support and academic enrichment, and Title V Part B, rural and low-income schools. Now, all 5 of these grants together will total a little over $1 million. I think it's estimated at $1,017,000 for this coming year.
Excuse me just a moment, Mr. Mullins. You have a summary in your packet of the Title I applications. Go ahead, sir.
So just to kind of summarize each of those grants, but again, the total altogether is $1,017,000. When I say estimated, what I'm referring to is we won't get the final allocation amounts for these grants until probably September. So we have to submit them July the 1st. The Department of Ed gives us their final allocations in September. These are estimates based on information we've received so far. So Title I Part A, the estimate for this grant for the coming year is $800,000, the largest of the 5 by far. This grant provides federal funds to operate our Title I programs in our 3 elementary schools. This includes computer lab teachers at each of our elementary schools, Title I reading teachers at each of our elementary schools, and Title I, along with the Virginia Preschool Initiative state funds, provide our pre-K program in our elementary schools. So we have 7 classes of pre-K across the division. Title I pays a little under half of that cost. Title II Part A, the estimate for this grant is $113,000 for the coming school year. The grant provides federal funds to pay for class size reduction teachers in grades kindergarten through 6. The grant will cover salaries for 3 teachers in those grade levels. The funds assist in maintaining lower class sizes across those grade spans. 100% of this grant goes towards salaries for 3 teachers. And let me just go back up to Title I Part A real briefly. 97% of that grant, 97% of the $800,000 goes towards salary and benefits for 12 full-time and 5 part-time teachers. Okay. Title II Part A, 100% of that grant goes towards the salaries of 3 teachers in grades kindergarten through 6 for class size reduction. So let me give you an example of when we say class size reduction, what we're talking about. Let's say we're projecting a class, a 3rd grade class in one of our elementary schools with 72 students for this coming year. Standards of quality, the state standards of quality say you can have a student-teacher ratio of 24 to 1 for those grade levels, for third grade. So we could have 3 teachers and have 24 in a class as the student-teacher ratio. These federal funds allow us to add a 4th teacher, and that class size student-teacher ratio would go from 24 to 1 to an 18 to 1 ratio. A much smaller class size, would be much better for our students. And that's what I mean when I say class size reduction teachers. If it would bring us below standards of quality, and we all know the standards of quality are the minimum, that's what we go by. It's not always the best. And in this case, these federal funds will allow us to supplement all these federal programs, supplement our existing programs that we have in our schools. So that's just an example, because some of these other grants also deal with class size reduction. Title III, statewide consortium, this grant is estimated at $1,360 for next year. The grant provides funds to assist our division's English learner students, and we purchase materials and supplies for language development with those funds. Title IV, Part A, the estimate for this grant is $64,000 for this coming year. This grant will cover 1 additional class size reduction teacher in the elementary grades. Okay, that's grades K through 6 still. It will cover both salary and benefits for that teacher. 100% of this grant goes towards teacher salary and benefits. And Title V, Part B, rural schools, we estimate this grant to be $39,000 for the coming year. This grant works in conjunction with Title II, Part A. Grant, this will cover the benefit cost of the 3 teachers from Title II, Part A, which covered the salaries. This grant will cover the benefits for those 3 class size reduction teachers. 100% of this grant goes toward teacher salary and benefit expenses. So between Title II, Part A, Title IV, Part A, and Title V, Part B, we cover an additional 4 teachers. Now, they're not known as class size reduction teachers. They're a 3rd grade teacher, they're a 4th grade teacher, whatever grade level it is, but we're allowed to reimburse, get those funds through these federal grants to cover those costs. Of course, we just asked for approval of these grants tonight. I would mention, just because we received this letter yesterday, but back in February, our Title I, Title III, and Title V programs went through a federal monitoring or federal review process. We just were notified yesterday that, of course, we're in compliance with all those programs. That's always a good thing. When you go through federal monitoring, that's pretty major, and we're proud of that. So I want to acknowledge the work of Ms. Deidre Deal. She's our Title I coordinator, all of our Title I teachers, and of course our school administrators, to make sure that our Title I programs and all of our federal programs are operating as they should. But I'll try to answer any questions you have, but we would ask for approval of these grants.
And Mr. Mullins, I had a question. First, I'll say I appreciate everyone who works. I know it's very important to get federal grants. On the class size reduction grants that you mentioned, are any of those grants eligible to add teacher's aides to the classroom that you know of?
The grants can be written for various items, and we've chosen to write our grants this way. We could do that. Of course, if we did that, that would be those 4 teachers that we would need to come up with those funds
Sure.
from somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Was there a motion made when I was out?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I apologize for the phone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. This time I'd like to ask Mr. Setzer to come to the front. He's going to have the next 2 items for us: approval of the proposed VSBA policies and also the 2020-21 DCPS Student Parent Handbook and the Handbook for Students.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Mr. Chair, members of the board, there's 19 policies and 1 regulation that we are recommending for approval. All these policies are based on legislation changes that go in effect on July 1st. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about them, and it's our recommendation we do approve these.
And may I say, Mr. Setzer, we sent those in May, I believe,
Yes.
sir, by email to each of the board members.
Make a motion that we approve these proposed VSBA policies.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, as a result of the legislation changes and the policy changes that go into effect on July 1st, we also have to update our student parent handbook. I think this was sent out a while back as well.
Yes, sir.
It is our recommendation we approve the handbook. Again, the only changes are the legislation changes to the handbook. So unless there's any questions, we also ask approval of this handbook. This is one of 2. We'll have another one coming. Not quite as thick as this one, but we give these to every student in our division. This particular one has a sheet in the back of it that parents must sign and return to the schools that they've received it. So we ask for approval of this 2021 student and parent handbook.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We have had a discussion in our office about whether to print handbooks due to the COVID-19. I think we've come to a consensus that we will place them online, and that way it hopefully will not be a matter of transmitting COVID-19 or anything else that way. So that will be our recommendation. We may have a few printed, but most of them will be online and available to students in that manner. Our next item is discussion and approval of revisions to DCPS policy GA and language revision to employee contract. In discussion with Scott Mullins and also neighboring regional superintendents, we're proposing an additional statement to DCPS policy GA policies goal, which would read, the school board strives to communicate clearly with its employees through employment contracts which define the rights and responsibilities of parties, notwithstanding any policy interpretation to the contrary. Employment contracts shall be implemented as written unless inconsistent with applicable law. We're also proposing language revision to employee contract having to do with furlough. In talking with superintendents across the state, specifically and also in Region 7, due to just the unknown of next year, there are many school divisions that are adding a furlough statement to the policy, to the employee contract. This does not mean that we are going to furlough anyone for 3 months or 6 months or anything in that manner. We hope we never have to furlough anyone. But in these unknown times, we felt that for our employees and also for our school division, that the term of using a statement about furlough, number one, would help us in that, for example, a reduction of, instead of a reduction in force, if we came to that point, a furlough statement would be better suited. Mr. Mullins, is there anything there that I need to add, sir?
No, I just to be clear, from my perspective, just know that it seems as though every school board in the Commonwealth is moving this way. And the whole idea, I've heard it said that furlough is you can fine tune it. Someone said you can play it like a fiddle. but if you don't do the furlough, it's just a RIF policy. It's meet, leave, or you're fired. And so the furlough gives you an opportunity to work with your employee base, and if you get cut through COVID-19, whatever may happen, to still keep people employed. Maybe they go for a week and they are not employed, they're still employed. They still get their health care, but they're not getting a paycheck. But that's better than just riffing, firing people because you can't afford to do it. So it's an opportunity to achieve a balance between our need to be able to balance the budget and the employees' need to stay employed and to know that they have security.
Is there any criteria listed for how that would take place, or is it just?
Mr. Razzak, I don't think that we've ever been here before, but from what I can tell, I've sat in on a couple of classes about this. I think that it's essentially to work with your financial directors to take stock of what COVID or whatever crisis you got, but in all likelihood, COVID has done with you, to take stock on what your board of supervisors are willing to financially support, and then to try to keep your essential functions, the folks that you've got to have to educate kids, to keep them employed in school, and for the others, to try to keep them employed, keep them a paycheck, keep them in health care, but only consistent with your ability to do that in the budget. It is state law. It's really constitutional law that we can't enter into a contract, and we can't be bound to a contract if we don't have the money to do it. And so furlough is just an opportunity to look at the totality of the circumstances, afford what you need, see what you can afford to do, what you really need to do, and you've got a lot of discretion. The other thing with this is being recommended by the School Boards Association is to let your employees know up front, particularly your non-professional staff, that the idea going in may be that you're going to be employed doing task A, but if later on we need you to take Lysol and clean, the chairs or the desks or whatever else you may be required to do, that we've got to have flexibility, and in return we're going to try to keep you employed. So it's a desire to have flexibility, I think, to address things we really don't know what's going to unfold. If I'm answering your question.
I understand that. It certainly puts a little bit of stress, I would think, on the employee. Usually in the past you had some idea of what what the dismissal or the rearrangement of your employment would be, but in this it doesn't sound like that exists.
Well, I guess all I can say is I think that as long as we're funded, there's a commitment on our part to keep everyone that's within this budget employed. But, it should not, we shouldn't forget that we have had mid-year adjustments before. And if we get mid-year adjustments, we've got to be able to adjust ourselves. And what Elizabeth Ewing with the School Boards Association has said is that furlough is what it is, but it's much better than just telling people you may be ripped.
I have a similar concern, Mr. Razzak. There how's it written in as far as a notification to the employee prior to that happening? Is there a 30-day notice, or?
We usually at your non-professional staff, it's always going to be a minimum of 2 weeks. I think that would be unfair. I think that 2 weeks notice, we always strive to let people know as quickly as you can, but a minimum of 2 weeks for your support staff at the lower levels of your pay grades, a minimum of 2 weeks.
Is this policy already written, or is it something that's coming to see?
Mr. Razzak, in your board packet, the only change to your existing policy, which is your personnel goal, is this, and I'll read it real quickly. The school board strives to communicate clearly with its employees through employment contracts which define the rights and responsibilities of the parties. Notwithstanding any policy interpretation to the contrary, employment contracts shall be implemented as written unless inconsistent with applicable law. So what we're telling their employees is we are committed to what we tell you in this document in writing. So if this writing says that your responsibility is only this, then that's your responsibility. But if your employment contract says you'll do this as long as we need you to do this, but you can also be assigned to do other things. If there's a student need and we don't have students, and your function was solely to deal with students, then we're going to keep you employed if we can, but you're going to have to adapt because there's no students for you to work with. And that's the goal.
That's very clear.
We've had, and we certainly will include that and have discussions with the Education Association and Mrs. Mullins. Again, we do not want to use the furlough language. There are several regional divisions that have had local cuts of $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 mid-year, and instead of any kind of furlough language, they've actually had to let people go. Just say, I'm sorry. We don't want to get to that point. We hope we never use this. We hope we never have to use this. But I think the most important thing is what Mr. Mullins has said, and that is we don't know what next year will look like, and all of us may be wearing a lot of different hats, including the superintendent, which is maybe cleaning, maybe passing a broom, maybe riding on a bus. We just don't know what next year will look like. So the language here, while it sounds different, it is not. It is just a way to say we want to be able to honor our contracts. We want people to keep their benefits, especially the health insurance. And if we get to the point, of course we will come back to the board, if we get to that point, then instead of saying to our support staff, our teachers, I'm sorry, we just don't have the funds, at least this will give us another way to address issues that we hope we never have to address. But school divisions all around us have had to address that, and especially in this time. Other questions or comments? So I think we need two, do we need two motions? One is for file DCPS GA. We need a motion there to revise that language, and then we will be glad to send you any kind of, and it's a very short 2-sentence that will be added to the employment contract. That will be the only change to the employment contract. That will be going out next month. Mr. Mullins, will we need two motions on that or one, sir?
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
Will we need two motions, one for GA?
Well, I think just a motion that we amend our policy and that we implement contracts as written with furlough language would be fine.
I'll make that motion. You got a question?
It was in your packet, but we'll be glad to get that for
I
Miss.
see what's in the packet. I'm just saying, as far as the contract, I assume it's going to be somewhat different, is it not?
Was that?
Actually, and let me jump into that one. I believe that we did 8 different contracts. They ranged everything from bus driver to salaried support, hourly support, extracurricular, probationary teacher, tenured teacher, there were several contracts. Now, typically, the form of the contract, I don't know that we've ever had the board approve that, but if you want to see those contracts, we can certainly make them available.
Yes, sir, and we can certainly make the language
I
available.
would think before I vote to approve it, I'd like to read it.
Okay.
Sure.
That's my opinion personally, but I don't know that everybody shares it.
Well, maybe what we could do, would it work with our schedule as far as getting the employees' contracts to do it, to review the contracts at the next meeting?
Yes, sir. And if we have a special call meeting before then, I think that would be more beneficial to let the board. And what I'll do, Mr. Resnick, I'll send that information to each of the board members. Just the language, because that is going to be added. I'll also share that with all of you. And then if we have a special call meeting within the next week or so, then perhaps the board can revisit that.
I would very much appreciate that. It just seems something of great importance that
Yes, sir.
going to affect a lot of lives potentially in a way that before I approve it, I'd like to know exactly what's there to
Absolutely,
approve.
and I understand that.
So maybe we could table both the policy and the contracts and give everybody an opportunity to get into the contracts and understand what's in them.
I appreciate that very much, and I think everybody would, because there's really no timeline, I mean, to do this now, I don't think it's.
When do we normally get?
We have contracts out in July, by the end of the July. And what I'll also do is that I'll schedule a meeting with the Dickson County Education Association Board. With everything going on, we have not done that. I'll be glad to do that, and I can share that with them, the same information.
Yeah, because there's other issues that come into play with a furlough that we have to talk about. I know that they would keep health insurance coverage, which is good.
Yes, sir.
We have to talk, I think we'd have to at least discuss it on some level, VRS service. If that stops and picks back up, or it continues during a furlough.
The VRS continues, sir.
Yeah, it would continue, and you know, there were a lot of facets to this. The question came up about at what point do you have, if you furlough, at what point can people draw unemployment? If you furlough, at what point do people say, well, I want to use my sick leave instead of being furloughed? So this, and in all fairness, this wasn't something that we started out from whole cloth on. We got material from school law experts that were sent down, I think, through the School Boards Association. So things were vetted out. But let's share it and talk about it, and I think that's the better approach.
And we'll get that information to the board.
Do we need a motion to table this item?
Yes, until the next board meeting.
I'll move the table.
Second.
All in favor?
I believe the information was in your board packet, but I will resend that to each of you so that you can see the language that will be used. Also, any other information, then be sure to contact.
It sounds like something that we'll probably be asking a lot of questions about, in my opinion, and I don't know.
You want to be prepared.
It sounds pretty complicated, basically.
Well, you may ask I think it's not, I think we may have made it sound more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
But after you get it, if you've got questions, we'll go through it.
Well, I know there's a lot of teachers in a neighboring county, when their contracts came out with furlough language, they got pretty upset. And so I think it'd be good for us to table this and see that, and not only once, whatever we decide, if we decide, what that looks like is to communicate that out with our teachers, some of those questions we just asked, when can you do this, and basically actually communicate with them as well. We're not looking to furlough.
No,
you're
not, sir.
But I do think that furlough is a better option than RIF policy.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think that's what motivated many superintendents when we saw that you might be able to use a furlough statement, but if you didn't have that in your contract, then you're talking about actually people losing their jobs, losing benefits, losing VRS, losing health insurance. And
Better
so
to
I-
have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right?
And so I think that was the impetus for us to try to look at that. And as you know, since COVID-19, things have just moved in lightning speed. And this is one of those issues that has moved in lightning speed. You know, what do you do? And so I know the board joins me in this. I don't want anyone to lose their job, period.
There's so much that's unknown, and people are frightened. And
Yes.
I think we need to, as clearly as we can,
Yes.
show this process in a way that's
And I think also,
effective and-
you're absolutely correct. And you know, the furlough statement, you know, you hear, and it's used intermittently, but for example, some company is going to furlough 300 people. You know, those kinds of things. I mean, it is a frightening issue, but that's not what the intent of this is at all. We just don't want people to lose their jobs.
Right.
If we get into a situation, we do not want people to lose not only their job, but all of their benefits.
And I want to leave it by just, I think the thing that really caps it for us, very few people read your policy manual. Most people read their employment contract. The whole idea was to put it right in front of them so they could see that there was a potential they could be furloughed. There was a potential that, you know, that they would be asked to do something
Yes.
other than the job they think they're going to start doing. And so I guess
That's in their favor, obviously.
Yeah.
in fundamental fairness, I wanted them to not be under any, you know, misapprehensions or misunderstandings that they were guaranteed to do some task, that if it came down to it within their capacities, you know, some people are healthier than others, can do other things, but, you know, but within their capacities, they had to be flexible. And, but we'll show it to you and then we'll work through it.
Any other questions or comments? We've tabled that, and if we have a special call meeting within the next week or so, or 2 weeks, then we'll certainly bring that agenda item. I will send that out to each of you and also the Dixon County Education Association so that we're all on the same page. Is there anything else to proceed with that? Thank you. Update on the DCPS recovery, redesign, and restart. Took a time to really go through this before it went on the board packets on Friday, and it's already, changes have been made since then. So let me kind of share with you where we are. Yesterday afternoon, Governor Northam, I believe we're there, Governor Northam announced that we were on phase 3. Now, what does phase 3 mean? Phase 3 means that we can offer additional in-person instruction. That will be pre-K through 12. We are to implement a staggered schedule, allowing students to return to school in groups, perhaps taking turns attending school 1 day or 2 days, or those kinds of things. And so while we were planning on phase 2, we kind of had to switch gears to phase 3 now. So as of today, and if you'll just allow me, and thank you, Mr. Robinson, we've had 1,227 parents do an online course and 190. What I'd like to ask our parents not have access to online survey, please contact the school and to submit the survey online. Now, the staff survey is very, very important. We need input from our staff. We also need from our parents. We need to know what our parents are going to feel comfortable with. And if you've had an opportunity to look at that parent survey, it says this. Here are the options. We can have AA, one group of students comes on Monday, Tuesday. We use Wednesday as a professional development, planning, deep cleaning day, online day, and we have another group of students coming Thursday and Friday. That's one example of a staggered schedule. Another staggered schedule may be that a student comes Monday, another group comes on Tuesday, another group comes on Thursday, another group comes on Friday, those kinds of things. So it's kind of a rotating. Another staggered schedule may be that one group comes 3 days a week, the next one comes 2 days a week. Another schedule, and help me here if I'm incorrect with this, but it may be that all students come, certain part of the students come on 1 week, and the rest are online that week, and then it flips-flops, and then those students come to school 1 week, and those other students are online. I think one thing that I have finally myself come to accept, that we are going to be on a staggered schedule, as I've just described, one of those, until a vaccine is readily available. I don't see from Zoom meetings with the state superintendent, Virginia Department of Health, that we're going to be able to bring everyone back at the same time as we did. That, what school looked like before March the 13th last year, we are not going to be able to begin with, and we will not be able to get there until there's a vaccine, and we have, you know, a great number of people that have taken the vaccine. So that is something difficult to wrap with. I think, you know, in my own mind, I was hoping, you know, okay, if we start school, somehow we can start school like normal. That, I believe, is not going to happen. Another issue with the phases is this. We may start on phase 3, but then we may go to phase 1. And of course, phase 1 may be that we're completely shut down. And it may be for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we don't know, and we'll only have online instruction. Or we could begin with phase 3, and then we go down to phase 2, and that will only be pre-K through 3 students. So not only do we need to be very flexible as the year goes on, but we are also going to have to be very agile, because things may change now very quickly, and if they do, we have to adapt to that. So right now, the reason that we are asking all of our parents and all of our staff to complete that is so that we'll know. We will be limited, as you know, to the number of students that ride a bus. And so if parents can and will bring students to and from school, that means that we will have less, we will be able to put more students on the bus if an additional transportation is provided by the parents. It may mean that perhaps parents choose, I don't feel comfortable with my child coming to school, therefore they're going to be on remote learning. And what we've been advised is that if a parent feels that, then we're going to provide them with online instruction. We don't recommend that, but we understand that parents are very, very concerned. We don't recommend that for the instructional part, because we feel like students would learn more if at least there's face-to-face with a teacher, but we also respect and honor that parents may not feel comfortable, and we also may have a vulnerable population of students that can't come to school. So that's another issue. Our students with special needs, they're going to be in school with us every day, and so that's another population of students. So we are still awaiting guidance from the Virginia Department of Education. We're still waiting to see from our parents, because the transportation piece is going to be significant. You know, which children do we pick up on which day? And if they're family members, we know that parents will say, I want them to come to school. For example, if it's Monday, Tuesday, I want them to come on Monday and Tuesday together. If it's Thursday and Friday, I want them to come. So we have to consider that. The other part of this is the food, okay? When the child is with us, then we will be able to provide breakfast and lunch. One of the reasons that we have looked more seriously at the AA, or Monday, Tuesday, and then another group Thursday, Friday, is for this reason. On Tuesday, we can provide lunch and breakfast for those children at the end of the day for 3 days. On Friday, we can provide lunch and breakfast for students for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So there's not only the transportation issue that we need to work through, but there's also the food issue that we need to work through. We're going to be limited in the classroom as far as how many students we can put in the classroom. And all of our principals have marked off their classrooms. And so we know that probably, unless we receive a variance, it's going to be 10 to 12 to 13 students per class. We're not going to be able to put any more students in there. We're going to have to look at 6 foot between the students. Our staff are going to be required to wear a mask if they can't keep the 6 foot distance. We're going to encourage our students, or especially our older students, to wear masks. But children under 10 are not. It's not recommended for them to wear a mask. Another issue that we're working through is screening. We're going to have to screen every child every day when they come into the building. One of the things that we've discussed is that as soon as they get on the bus driver or someone there is taking their temperature. Okay? If they have a temperature, we hope to educate our parents to say, if your child has a temperature, please don't send them to school. Because if a child walks into the bus and they have a temperature and they go back and sit down, then you see what happens. They have perhaps are contagious to all the other children. So that is another aspect. For the children that are, come with parents, we're going to have another station that those children are again screened. As soon as they walk in the building or they go to their homeroom, they're going to be screened. And so their temperatures will be taken, they will be asked questions. And if a child is suspected of having a temperature or a staff member, then each school is going to have to identify an isolation room where those children can go, that staff member can go, and they're isolated from the rest of the group. So as you see, the month of July, trying to get ready for all of this is going to be very important. That's why we need staff and parent input. We need to know how many students are going to actually be riding the bus. How many students are actually going to, be dropped off or picked up. Or how many students are going to be dropped off in the morning, but they'll need to ride in the afternoon, because you see how that's going to change that. We know that there's more challenges ahead, and for parents that are like many of us, we're ready to send them back to school, and how soon can you get them there? We're not going to be allowed to do that. And it's not just the Dickson County Public Schools, it's the entire state. There are issues that we're going to have to address, and there are circumstances that we have to address, because our first priority will be to keep our children safe and our staff safe. If we have a COVID-19, God forbid, incident in our schools, then more than likely, a whole group of students will have to be quarantined. Staff members will have to be quarantined for 14 days. I mean, it just continues. So in the next 2 weeks, we're waiting to await more guidance from BDOE. But what I want the board to know before we meet then is to let you know that the parameters that we have is that we're going to begin on a staggered schedule. Right now in phase 3, it will include pre-K through 12 students for those parents that want to send their students. It will not be all the students. It will be half the students each day. We're not quite sure how all of that will work. and then all of those other issues there. We may ask the board to approve a delay in opening school to either the 10th or the 17th. We have to have an instructional plan by to the Virginia Department of Education 15 days before school begins. We can rush, and we can try to put something together to begin on the 3rd, but based on just the health of our students and staff, it's the consensus of our administrative team and our leadership team. Let's do it right, let's do it thorough, let's do it well, and let's get all the information. So again, a lot of moving parts to this. None of the moving parts are good. But as far as returning to school in any kind of normalcy, I don't see that happening, and I hope I'm wrong, until a vaccine is available and there is a high percentage of students that have taken the vaccine or that. And the other thing is that we may start in one phase, but we may quickly be moved to another phase. Right now, Virginia's numbers are low. I think the curve is, that's the statement, the curve is on a downward trend. But if you look at states around us, everything's going up. And so I don't know what all of that means for us. So I will stop right there and just ask what questions you have, what comments you have, and what concerns you have.
I was just wondering if, and seeing if I'm interpreting this correctly. I know we've got special learning needs children, and then our pre-K through, which they're in phase, they're part of phase 2.
Correct.
Does that mean that, have they given instruction as like maybe these pre-K through 3 are everyday students, or?
No. Even pre-K through 3, and that's a great question, Mr. Hicks, even pre-K through 3 is on a staggered schedule. All right? Because we have to meet the maximum capacity in the classroom of a desk being 6 feet apart. Okay? So even if it's pre-K through 3, we have to follow the same maximum occupancy, not only on the bus, but also in the classroom.
You mentioned, and this thought just occurred to me, that we need to screen kids every day, and that we may screen them when they get into homeroom and those kind of things. I'd maybe consider, see if there's a way we can screen them before they get out of mom and dad's car when they drop them off. Yeah. You know, because if my kid's running a temperature and I get down the hill and I don't have cell phone service for you to get a hold of me, you know, and then not only that, what if there's 2 kids in the car? One of them has a fever, the other one doesn't. Now you've got, you know, 2 different rooms.
And you know, the same thing on the bus.
Yeah, it is.
You know, we screen, we've kind of tossed this around. You know, we screen a child as they come in on the bus, correct? They've got a temperature. Well, mom and dad have gone to work. Now what do? We can't leave that child and won't leave that child on the bus stop. What do we do? Okay? You're absolutely correct. A child is dropped off. Their mom and dad are in a hurry. The child has a temperature. You know, by the time we screen them and you know, they're gone. So yes, it's going to be very frustrating for parents. That's why we're going to begin very early, educating parents and saying, please pre-screen your child before your child leaves to school. You know, if your child already has a temperature, please don't send them to school, because your child will be screened as soon as they come in, and if they have a temperature, they'll be taken to an isolation room, and you'll be responsible, or we'll take that child home. We've discussed, and in our discussions, we've purchased masks for our staff. They're a cloth mask. You know, the other, we've purchased PPE equipment for our bus drivers, our nurses, you know, our custodians, our principals. It's just a mind-boggling thing. The high school is probably the most difficult. because they're also recommending that students remain in the classroom all day long. So they will be having lunch there. They may go and get lunch, but they come back into the classroom. If they have PE, the PE teacher will come into the classroom. It will be with only one group. If they have music, that music teacher will come in too. So you can see all the scheduling logistics there. At the high school, they're actually changing classes. They can't travel in, they can't remain in one group. So what do we do in our hallways? Number one, to promote 6 feet. They must wear a mask if they're in the hallway. You know, they go down one way in the hallway and they come up another way. Just what about stairwell? And then our custodial staff, who's been trained and will probably need to have more training, they'll need to go behind our students and constantly just wiping everything down. We've had the comment in our office that, children come to school to share, to learn to share, and we're saying to them, don't share. Don't share your objects, don't share your scissors, don't share. If you've been in a pre-K class or a kindergarten class, we're going to tell our children, sit 6 feet apart and don't hug each other. Just the logistics of all of that. It is going to be an educative experience for our staff, for our parents, and for our children. But according to the Virginia Department of Health and people and experts in this area, this is what we're going to have to do to keep our children and our staff healthy. And whatever we can do to do that, then it's worth it. Other questions or comments? And if you feel mind-boggling or mind-boggled right now, then join the school divisions across the state. Today we had a conference call, and the comment was made, if misery loves company, then there's a lot in this company. So just to recap, in 2 weeks, approximately 2 weeks, we will come back to the board. We will announce, after we've had time to make sure that we've gotten all the guidance, and the guidance won't change. We will announce how we will begin school. We may ask for a delay in the beginning of school, just to help us. And then announce to our parents based on the surveys and those kinds of, that kind of information, what kind of staggered schedule we're going to have and how we're going to do the buses and all those kinds of things. Today, and I'll finish with this, today there were superintendents that met with their health directors in their area, and the advice from their health director was this: in our area, we've not gone through the first wave. Other parts of the country are talking about the second wave. We've not gone, according to their experts, we've not gone through the first wave. I hope we don't, but we've not gone through the first wave. So their advice to these superintendents was this: get the students in school the first 2 weeks, get them comfortable with online and remote learning, and then be ready to shut down.
I know there'd been some discussion about Chromebooks. What is going to be the process on that? Do we know?
Those have been purchased. Our technology staff is working very diligently, and what we are planning on is to give those to students the first 4 days or whatever time, as quickly as possible. Teach them how to use the Chromebooks, and then Also, our technology staff and our ITR person, with Mr. Hicks's help, we certainly appreciate that, Mr. Hicks. They are producing online videos to help parents. What do you do on a Chromebook? How do you do that? Because we're going to be teaching new instruction. We're moving on. That's what we've been mandated to do. And also to have a training for our children. Any other questions or comments regarding that? So I know it seems that there's a lot of things in the air. There's, a lot of balls in the air, and there are. But we're going to get there. We'll work through it. We always have. It may take us a little bit more time, but I would prefer doing it right and doing it safely. And even then, I'm sure there will be a lot of issues that we need to discuss. Other questions or comments? If not, I'm going to ask Mr. Barton to come to the front to talk to us about the approval of the VACOR for FY21. As Mr. Barton comes, I'd just like to, please, if you have an opportunity to talk to our parents, if they do not have online access, please ask them to call their school, and they will be able to help them complete the survey.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have received our renewal insurance quote from our present carrier, VACOR, for the term of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. In your package was included the contribution summary form listing the premiums due, coverage limits, and deductibles for the policy year. The total estimated premiums due are $181,759. Our premiums have decreased by $9,519 from what we were paying this year, mainly due to a decrease in our work comp experience modifier, which is based on claims data. At this time, we are recommending that we renew our insurance coverage for property, liability, automobile, student accident, and workers' compensation insurance for the term of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021 with VACOR.
I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I see one of our resource officers there. And, sir, you will have to be here at school every day. Whatever schedule we're on. Thank you.
That brings us down to board comment. We've been presented a lot of information tonight. We're getting ready to start a very unusual school year. I'm really unsure how it all will work out, but I'm sure that Dickson County school system will do its best to do the best job possible. I have full confidence in our staff. Thank you.
Well, I tell you, we have a good Dickinson County school system, and I hate to see some of those retirees go out the door that we have. We've had some excellent people retire this year. I just hope that we will have the ability to hire some people who are as good or proves to be as good as they are.
Yes.
I'm just glad I'll just say I'm glad to have more folks in the room and to be able to have more faces around. So I appreciate y'all's attendance and glad that we're getting to a point that we can have more people in. We're going to have to work on our group photo social distancing policy, I think. That's kind of hard to do. But congratulations to the retirees. It's 49 years, 42. Gosh, that's pretty amazing. I've got a little over 20 in, and I thought, I don't know if I'll make 40-some. I can tell you that right now. Very appreciative of the Board of Supervisors and that discussion's beginning to start. That's very promising, and I'm glad to see that has got kind of got the ball rolling. And you know, I'll just say this about that furlough language. I know about all school systems are putting that in. And like Mr. Raddick said, that's folks that are scared and those kind of things. But I hope that through this budget cycle that as a board, we've sort of proven to you that we want to keep you working. And, you know, this furlough language is just what furlough language is. It gives us more options rather than a RIF policy.
I'd just like to say thanks to the resource officers and all the help that they give, and how much, I hope you all know how much you are appreciated. Also to our employees that carried on to work all summer, and superintendent and her staff with guiding all this. And you're looking at this coming year, it looks like the guidebook will be thicker than the moonshiner's pocketbook, I suspect.
Would you say that again? I'm sorry. I've not heard that. What was it?
I was just thinking of how complicated, just in discussing it in general, how complicated this is, but it has to be done. So I guess we have to do it. But I know it'll be done well as best as anyone else can do it. I know our people can do that as well as anyone. I do know the parents and grandparents and all the caregivers are frightened, and for good reason. The news out there around this country is not good. I know down here it's better right now, and I hope it stays that way.
Yes,
but,
sir. That's our prayer.
We don't know what tomorrow holds, but we just know that we have to take care of our kids, and as best we can, help those families and those caregivers. Take care of those children. Keep them safe above all. That means keeping ourselves safe, I guess. It's a time like I guess I've read about in the Bible, but in my lifetime I don't remember anything that comes even close to the fear I feel with what we face around this country today. And I just know that our kids are in good hands with good people. And I think what Mr. Mullins said about the meeting with the supervisors, I'm real pleased that happened. I hope it leads to more productive results. And I said this before, we all know each other. We've known each other for most of our lives, many of us. We can work this out. We can do this. Let's get it done.
I think we all feel very fortunate to live in Dickson County. I know I do. A lot of things that's going on. You know, we're pretty fortunate and pretty lucky about a lot of things. I'm glad that we recognized our retirees tonight. I appreciate their service. And much thanks to all that the SROs do. Very glad to recognize them tonight. A very important role they play. Very challenging school year coming up. A lot of things to be concerned about. I know we're going to do the best that we can with those challenges. I think about you know, the students and adapting to learning, and it's a difficult adapting for the teachers as well. I hope that, and I feel confident that that we'll be able to do that, and our instruction provided will remain at a high level. Think about the working parents. It's going to be some difficulty for them, as Mr. Rasdick mentioned, the caregivers. It's some tough stuff. I hope we can communicate, dialogue, have solutions for you know, when children are home, how do we you know, a lot more often. I know we've already been dealing with some of that, but this looks like it's going to be a longer term thing. I didn't get a chance at the last meeting to give my appreciation for the comments from Mr. Edwards, and Miss Kathy is here again tonight, and Mr. David Yates' comments were well received. I know, I don't know if there's anybody in the county that has looked more into the studying of the Sand Lick site than he has. He's got a lot of information that he brought to us. Hopefully this board will consider it and look into it. I think a fair study of the Sand Lake site at this point for a PPA would be the right thing to do, and there could be some issues. I know there are some issues that may not work out with that, but if we could study all the sites and give them their due diligence, I think that would be the right thing to do. Thank you.
Pursuant to Section 2.2-3711, Paragraph A of the Code of Virginia, there will be a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing, 1, employment issues relating to resignation, coaches, and employment recommendations. 2, discussion of appointment and term of the superintendent, certain contractual matters, Virginia Code Section 22.1-60, to consult with legal counsel and receive briefings by staff members pertaining to actual litigation with the Board of Supervisors and IDA regarding the location of the proposed new elementary school pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A17. Now move we go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.